Hello and welcome, I'm Oksana and you're watching Head to Head with UATV. Washington has condemned Russia's Nord Stream 2 pipeline project as a, quote, geopolitical weapon, following claims it will increase Europe's dependence on Russian gas. U.S. President Donald Trump and Slovakia Prime Minister Peter Pellegrini slammed the project for leaving other nations vulnerable. To discuss this, we're joined in the studio today by Oksana Ishchuk, analyst in international and energy relations at the Center for Global Studies, Strategy 21. Hello and thank you for joining us today. So let's start with the level of readiness of this construction.
Yes, the level of threat is very high for Ukraine, as if Nord Stream 2 will be built, then the transit through the territory of Ukraine will be stopped. This transit is approximately 3% of GDP of Ukraine, so it is a huge amount for our budget.
This can, okay, I was asking about the readiness, but if we're talking about the threat, you said that this is 3% GDP?
3% of Ukrainian GDP and approximately 3 billion Ukrainian hryvnia.
But this year forecast about Ukrainian GDP is totaling about 3%. So can this deprive Ukraine of GDP growth, at all?
I'm not speaking about growth, I'm speaking about total number of Ukrainian GDP.
It's not about growth. Okay. So if we're talking about the readiness of the project, how much, what distance of this pipeline have been already constructed?
On the latest announcement of Gazprom, about 1,000 kilometers of 1,200 was built. The Nord Stream 2 is built in German territorial waters and in Russian waters. Also some part of a subsection of pipeline is built in Swiss territorial waters, but there is no section in Denmark territorial waters, as Denmark asked for additional ecological assessment of the project.
Denmark is the last country who didn't give permission yet. Yes, this is the last
country who didn't give the permission. And there's also some construction and infrastructure should be built in Russia near the Estonian border.
So basically, do they have to ask for Estonian permission as well?
No, they don't need Estonian permission.
Because these are Russian territorial waters.
Yes, the only country, it's Denmark, as you have said.
If we're talking about this ecological assessment, the assessment of ecological influence, as far as I understand, of this pipeline, this is already the third one. Do you think that somehow the result of this assessment can be different?
We don't know about the results of this assessment because Denmark would not be the only country who don't give a permit for the Nord Stream 2, and it do not want to be the only country who forbid the construction. So Denmark do not want to be the main enemy of Gazprom. So we can say that Denmark is waiting for the American steps according to Nord Stream and waiting for some change in international situation. But now they asking for additional permission for building Nord Stream 2 ecological assessment. It means that the project will be prolonged. It will not be built on the 1st January 2020 as it was declared, and the prolongation will be very big because Gazprom now needs about 6-7 months to gather all necessary documents, of ecological assessment, and then Denmark will assess these documents.
They will review
these documents about 6-7 months. So we can say about 2 years of prolongation of the final date of opening this project.
You mentioned that Denmark probably is waiting for the United States to lead this opposition to the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, and we know that the U.S. ambassador to Germany, Richard Grenell, again warned German companies that they could be punished if they continue to work on the Russian-European project, this Nord Stream 2. So basically, yes, the United States is threatening Germany with the sanctions. How much can this scandal possibly deteriorate the U.S.-Germany relations?
Yes, there is also a huge risk of US-Germany relations if American sanctions will be imposed. We know then that on February 13 there was some bill, DASCA Act, which was reviewed, DASCA Act of 2019, and according to this act, not only a Russian company but also German companies, Uniper and Wintershall, could be sanctioned under this act as they are participating directly in this project. So it is not only reputational risks for the German companies but also financial risk, and now German companies are lobbying the limiting of this sanction, the softening of them. But the main consequence of the whole history with sanctions is absence of clarity. Because nobody knows when the sanctions will be imposed, and nobody knows what effect will have the sanctions on
so
the
we
companies.
Cannot have any preliminary estimates on the efficiency of the sanctions that might be imposed. We just know that some German companies and Russian companies would be under the sanctions, according to this act?
According to this act, according to this bill, which is now not published but under administrative process of approval, the companies which deal with Russian energy projects and which invest in Russian projects for more than 5 million euro for a year in aggregated form, they will be sanctioned. So if the bill will be enforced, if it will be approved, then German companies will be also under these sanctions.
But are these sanctions purely about companies, or will Sweden and Finland also be involved in this?
It is about entities and individual persons.
Individuals. Okay. How do you think, can this situation with the United States somehow change or reflect on the situation with the construction of the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, or despite of any sanctions, Germans and Russians would continue building this project?
In our opinion, if American sanctions will be imposed, then this will limit the stop. This will stop the project because now the American sanctions is the main leverage on the issue if project will be built or not. Approximately, not approximately, but the main threat for the project also is sanctions against subcontractors like Swiss company or Allseas company, which will lay down the pipeline on the Baltic Sea.
So basically, these companies, it is expected that these companies would refuse to continue work?
Yes, if sanctions will impose, it will be a great not only reputational but financial risks, not only for German companies but for subcontractors like Allseas group company, and they have a huge portfolio of projects, so they will not risk only with Nord Stream, and they will not want to lose another projects in another countries.
Well, this is, of course, political and also business issue for both countries, for Germany, well, for all of the countries, Germany, the United States, Russia, and of course, Ukraine as a gas transit country. Well, we see that this issue is political and also about business, and all of the countries that are participating in it, they have some business interests. The Russian Federation, Germany, of course, and America as a big gas exporter also, and Ukraine as a gas transit country. Do you think that this will end on the statements, or can these threats and sanctions be implemented?
There is no exact answer on your question because the situation, international situation, is changing very quickly. Both scenarios could be realized. If sanctions will be imposed, for our opinion, Nord Stream will be stopped. But there is no exact answer whether the sanctions will be imposed.
Even though billions of euros are being invested in the project, it can be stopped.
Yes, Gazprom claims that they have invested 5.8 billion euro in the project from 10 billion, but it is not completed yet. Under the gas directive, there is also Article 36, which proclaims that if the project is completed, then it could be excluded from the amended gas directive, which was approved by the Council of the European Union on
recently. This gas directive.
April 15. But nobody can say that Nord Stream 2 Nord Stream 2 is not completed now, and the main issue here is how to interpret the mention completed, half completed, almost completed. It is not put in operation.
Could you please explain us more about this new directive? How does it change the process, and does it deprive Gazprom somehow of the benefits, or maybe does it cut the volume of this gas supply to Europe?
Yes, it is not a new directive, it is amended directive. This directive was approved in 2009 in European Union, and now it was only amended, and this amended is that European Union gas market, internal market rules should apply not only on the European projects on the mainland, but also on the projects from the third countries on the offshore gas infrastructure. And it concerns also about Nord Stream 2 in German territorial waters. So now Nord Stream 2 are under applying of this amended directive, and according to it, Gazprom should make independent operator of gas. It means that there must be unbundling process. Gazprom should not ship and extract gas. There must be two companies according to unbundling. Also, there must be independent tariff regulation, and German regulator should make some price policy for tariff for gas on Nord Stream 2. And also there must be third-party access to the pipeline. Not only Gazprom's gas should be in pipeline, but also gas from independent other suppliers. Yes.
Well, I do know that the company behind the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline is threatening to sue the European Union if it's not allowed to avoid these new regulations, and this endangers the billions of euros that have been invested. Yes, as you mentioned, over 5 billion euros. And another important issue to mention is the European Parliament elections. They will be held in the end of May, and probably a lot depends on who is to head the new Parliament and the European Commission. And we do know that the European People's Party candidate for the next European Commission President, Manfred Weber, says that as head of the European Commission, he would block the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Is there really any mechanisms or some tools that he could possibly use if wins the elections that can roll back this process of construction?
Now it is a pre-election process, so Gazprom is waiting for the new parliament, new head of Euro Commission, and possible candidates for the head of Euro Commission, like Manfred Weber. They try to gather some points to play such a game, to be elected, and then to make some. They make such announcements to gain some points in this pre-electoral game.
So this is more about campaigning rather than a real change. So there is more hope on the reaction from the United States than actually from the reaction inside of the European Union.
In my opinion, the main limit for the project, the main stop for it will be American sanctions, but also the position of European Commission will also be very important, and if the head of the European Commission, if Manfred Weber will be the head of European Commission, and
he will support the United States.
He will support the stopping of the Nord Stream 2, it will be great for Ukraine and for all European countries depending on Russian gas.
Well, thank you so much for this clear conclusion to our conversation, and thank you for being a guest today in our studio. That was Oksana Ishchuk, analyst in international and energy relations at the Center for Global Studies Strategy 21. Thank you for watching Head to Head. I'm Oksana Ishchuk. Goodbye.